Last lecture, we introduced classes into our language. And they're an incredibly powerful tool to add to what we've been doing. By analogy, definitions gave us a way to add our own methods or procedures to our Python system. Classes give us our way to add our own data objects to the system, and that's really useful. And whether this is in Python or in any programming language, that idea of being able to bundle together pieces of data that naturally coexist and methods or procedures or functions specifically designed to manipulate that data, that idea is really valuable. As a consequence, even though we've looked at some examples, today we're going to do an extended example, looking at the different ways in which we can use classes to build a hierarchy of a system that lets us manipulate objects in a variety of ways. The example we're going to use is to build a little system that organizes information about people. And if that's what we're going to do, an obvious place to start is with a person object. Of course, I could add lots of different data attributes to a person object. For the sake of just building the system, we're going to start with some simple things. So a person is going to have a name. They're going to have a birthday. And we want to see things like, how could we get out the name? How could we get out the last name? Can we sort groups of people? How do we get the age? Things that let us access data associated with instances of this class. So let's build the class. Here's the start for it. As before, we're building a class. We're calling it person. It's going to inherit from the underlying object class, exactly as we did earlier on when we start building a system, because object is that underlying basic Python class that has associated with it standard methods we want to be able to use. As before, we need to be able to create instances of this class. So there's our init method right there. And it's just going to create a person with a name. I want to be able to get out information, so I'm going to be able to get out the last name, for example, of the person. And I want to be able to have something print out appropriately, and so I'll have a string method. Again, one of those built-in methods. We're now overriding underscore str, followed by 2 underscores. And in this case, when we print out information about a person, it's just going to print out its name. The only unusual thing I'm doing here is I want to get out not only the name, but the last name of a person. And I'm going to make the assumption that the last element in a name is the person's last name. I can get at that by taking advantage of the fact that I know a name will be a string, and using the built-in method split on it, split around spaces, will return for me a list of strings, each one a different portion of the person's name. And finally, I'm just going to extract the last element of that, as I said, assuming that the last portion of that string is the person's last name. Okay. I can build instances of people. I've got a couple of methods here. Let me add in a few more methods I'd like to be able to use. I said I want to give this person a birthday. Lots of ways I could do that, but I'm going to do this by importing a library, a module that exists in Python called datetime. And in particular, I'm going to be able to then say when I give a date of birth to a person by month, day, and year, datetime will automatically convert that into an internal representation that I could use. Now, I didn't tell you what the representation is. I'm not going to, because you shouldn't care. All I want to be able to do is to use it. And in particular, if I want to get the age of a person, as you can see in the bottom line of the slide, I will simply take datetime.date.today as a method. It gives me back a representation for today's date. I subtract from that the birthday, and then I can convert that into days, and it will give me the number of days since the person was born. And clearly then I can convert that into years or other kinds of representations of age. Key point here, I'm not telling you how it represents things internally. You shouldn't care. You should be able to just use this using the appropriate interfaces, which I'll do here. One last method. I'd like to be able to sort lists of people. And here I get to make a choice. Again, I'm defining my version of a built-in method called less than, or LT. And I'm going to make the choice that in general I'm going to sort people by their last name, which I've already stored away, unless they have the same last name, in which case I'm going to sort them by the entire name, which in essence will come down to sorting them by their first name. There's a definition of a class. You've seen some of these methods before. I'm building in something for init to create instances. I'm building something in for string to say how I'm going to print them out. I'm building something in for less than so I can compare them. And then I've got some internal data attributes, a name and a birthday. and I'm able to access those using getters like getLastName. Let's see what happens if we were to use this. So I'm going to create a little simple database of some people. Perhaps you recognize some of these names. And some of them I've given birth dates to, some of them I haven't. And I can create a list of those. So I have on my computer a version of this file ready to go. And I load it up. And I could look, for example, at people in this list. So I could say print out P1. And it says Mark Zuckerberg. And that's great because that was how I defined string to return things. Good. So what else might I do with this? Well, I said I want to be able to sort people in this list. So we can look at a simple little example of that. In particular, I could say for every person in the person list, just print them out and see what I get out. And I've shown it here. Let's check it on my computer to make sure it does the right thing. Again, I have loaded in a version of that. And so I'm going to clear it and reload it. And when I do that, sure enough, it prints it out in the order in which I created them, which is great. Now, what I'd like to do is say, let's sort them to see if the sorting mechanism works well. And notice what I do here. I use the built-in list method sort. So person list is a list. The dot says from that data type, get out the thing that's bound to the name sort, which is a procedure. And then the open close paren says call or invoke that procedure, which will sort the list in place, mutating it. And now I should be able to print it out and see what it looks like. And again, I'm going to load that up on my computer. And I'm going to run it. And in fact, now it has sorted it. And notice, in the case of two people with the same last name, it has sorted it by the full name, whereas everywhere else, it's simply sorted by last name. Simple little example that shows that I can start manipulating elements of this data structure. Let's see what we do if we build on top of it.